Daniel called me about 1 o'clock yesterday to let me know he wasn't going to be here. So he said, I hope you got something ready. Sure. Okay. I did want to mention Bodie Bottom. I guess everyone by now has heard that he went home. I told Debbie last night, I said, the older I get, I don't know if anybody here familiar with the movie Napoleon Dynamite?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
I told Debbie, I said, I get to be like Napoleon Dynamite when he's admiring the bike of his friend Pedro. And I hear the news that Bodie Bottom went home. I'm just like, lucky. Lucky. I mean, here we are, we're stuck here. Bodie's home. Charlie Kirk's home. Walker's home. And we're here. But he is one of the probably, in my life, probably one of the most important figures in my lifetime. He was one of the methods that God used, and probably the foremost method that God used to bring me to Calvinism. Because he just had arguments that I couldn't deflate. And I couldn't avoid them. And he laid it out with such eloquence and such authority that you just looked at the guy like, I believe him. Now, and Lord bless Larry Horton. He could tell me the same thing, and I'm ready to take Larry outside and whip him. Because he said it was true. It was all true, but he wasn't Bodie. To me, Bodie just had this, I put him on a pedestal. And he was so important to me. And this has been about, 15 years probably? At least 15 years that I recognized who Bodie was, and I just wanted to eat that stuff up, and he was spouting to me because it was gold. But it's a loss for us. And on a side note, another man that if you've never heard of, he's got videos everywhere. His name is David Miller. He's gone home to be with the Lord too. He's just an Arkansas country boy who was a paraplegic. With the exception, he could move, I guess, either his right or his left hand, because I say he controlled his wheelchair. Had memorized the entire Bible. Preached with no Bible. And just, wow. Look him up. David Miller. He was another awesome one that was along there with Bodie for me. All right. That's for free. Let's get down to it. This is going to be an introduction to the introduction of Hebrews. Now, I know that, months down the line, we're going to go over this book, but I just have some interesting questions and interesting takes, I guess, on Hebrews. And we've everyone's read Hebrews, but have you ever stopped to think why did God find it necessary to have the book to the Hebrews written? Anybody want to take a stab at that? Well, y'all are awful quiet. We know this book, and we love this book. But what was going on in the world that God said, we need this? Because it doesn't really cover any new ground. In honesty, it's a repetition of things that we've already heard.
Darrin,
Yes.
was it partly to encourage the Christians who were being ostracized from their community for following Christ and leaving Judaism?
I think you're on the right track, but I think that goes a little bit deeper than that. So what was going on in the world? As Faith Eden said, we have Christians of Jewish heritage who had come to faith in Jesus Christ. But there's almost a little underbelly here of, now you remember in James chapter 2 when we talked about the quotation, that quote, quote, faith, it's almost like it's rearing its head again because they had believed, and the book of Hebrews tells us, guys, you're doubting this now. You're trying to revert back. And turn to the book of 2 Peter because this is the crux of the matter. 2 Peter chapter 3. We're going to look at 4 verses. Second Peter chapter 3, beginning in verse 1. Peter writes, "This is now the second letter that I'm writing to you, beloved, and both of them I'm stirring up your sincere mind by way of reminder." So basically, in Okie Talk, he says, listen up. This second time I have to tell you the same thing I just told you. What? That you should remember, verse 2, the predictions of the holy prophets and the commandments of the Lord and Savior through your apostles. Knowing this, first of all, that scoffers will come in the last days with scoffing, following their own sinful desires. And here's the verse, verse 4. They will say, where is the promise of his coming? For ever since the fathers fell asleep, all things are continuing as they were from the beginning of creation. So what's going on in Hebrews here? We have supposedly learned people, and they came from Judaism, and they saw the light that was in Jesus Christ, and they're flocking to him, as what Bo's talking about in the book of Acts. I mean, there's thousands coming to Christ. But remember, time frame. This is around 33, 34, 35 AD when Bo's at in the book of Acts. All right, so that's kind of loose with the time frame. Well, now in Hebrews, now we're up. It's getting pretty close. It's late 50s, early 60s. So we've got about a 20-year gap between Acts and Hebrews, and something's happened. What is Peter saying? He says there's going to come a time, and it's here now, that people are going to say Christ is not the Messiah. Where is the promise of his coming? Where is this Jesus of Nazareth? Where is this Jesus, the King of the Jews? Because they're going to say, ever since our granddaddies have been put in the grave, that was the promise. And they're saying, it ain't here, and it ain't coming. We back up to verse 3. The scoffers are going to come. So let's take a look at this a little bit. Let's see what Jesus had to say. And I really hope to just stay in chapter 24 of Matthew, but I got to back up to chapter 23. And yeah, I'm going to step on Daniel's toes, but guess what? He ain't here. I'll show him. So let's go into Matthew chapter 23. And I just want to catch, because the continuity, we've got to look at chapter 23 before we get to chapter 24. Because we're going to see why the book of Hebrews is needed. So in Matthew 23, let's begin in verse 37. And it's culminating here. If you can picture a triangle up here, it's coming down here. This is the apex of the triangle. Man, we're right here. Christ is almost ready to go to Calvary. It is culminated up into this point. So here in 23 and 37, Jesus says, "O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it. How often would I have gathered your children together, as hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you were not willing. See, your house is left to you desolate. For I tell you, you will not see me again until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." Now that's very important, because now we're going to get into 24, Because right after that, 24:1, it says Jesus just walks away from the temple. I'm gone. I'm out of here. And the disciples come to him. But what does his disciples do? In God's sovereignty, what did these disciples make out? They started saying, "No, Jesus, how is this house going to be left desolate? Look at this thing. It's beautiful. Man, they're still trying to build it. And you just said it's desolate? What's going on?" And he said, "You see all these things, don't you? Truly, I say to you, there will not be left here one stone upon that will not be thrown down." All right. So now we have a statement from Jesus that things are not always going to be as they are. And he sat down on the Mount of Olives, verse 3. The disciples came to him privately, saying, "Tell us, when will these things be, and what will be the sign of your coming at the end of the age?" All right, so let's pause right there, because now we understand what Peter's saying in chapter 3. That there's going to come a time when scoffers are going to come and say, "Well, dude, Jesus said he'd be back. He still ain't back, and he's not coming back. So you boys just well to go back to Judaism because you believe something that was a lie." That's what's going on here. Where is the sign? What's going to happen? And the first thing that Jesus says, "See that no one leads you astray," which is exactly what Peter's telling them. "For many will come saying, come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and they will lead many astray." Now, I've always had issues with this verse, but honestly, I go back to my original thing when I was a teenager, figuring this verse out. Is this people saying that, yes, that's Jesus, or is it saying, I'm Jesus? I'm going to say yes to that question, because I think it's both. Well,
There's a show on TV called Cult Justice.
Yeah.
I happened to be scrolling through and saw it. And this guy said, "I am the second coming of Jesus."
right.
It
Yeah.
is cult. Yeah.
Yeah. But the language of it seems to indicate that both things could happen. And we know that's true. David Koresh evidently claimed to be some type of Christ. But I also think that there are false Christ who will admit that Jesus is the Son of God. How do we know that? Because look at the demons. They even said it. "Jesus, thou Son of God, are you come here to torment us before the time?" So they already admitted who he is. It doesn't mean they're going to be saved, but they know who he is. Jesus says you'll hear of wars and rumors of wars. "See that you are not alarmed, for this must take place, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are but the beginning of the birth pains." I want you to keep in mind, again, what Peter's saying in his second epistle. That promises were made, but people are going to scoff at them. That this time is not going to happen. It's not coming. "Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and put you to death, and you will be hated by the nations for my name's sake. And then many will fall away and betray one another and hate one another." Well, Jesus now just predicted what is going on in Hebrews. Because that's the crux of Hebrews. These Jewish Christians are now falling away. They're going back to Judaism. "And many false prophets will arise and do what? Lead many astray. And because lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold." We cannot even comprehend, and Jesus talks about it here later on. We cannot comprehend the lawlessness and the murderousness and just the criminality of 70 AD. Folks, it was bad. It was so bad, Jesus said, you won't see nothing like it. Nothing like this will ever happen again to this degree. And you can scoff and say, "Well, we've got this in history." No, Jesus is right. And I've talked about this before when we were talking about James. But people were getting sliced open because they might have coins in their belly. They might have swallowed their coins. They had run out of food and they began to eat each other. I mean, then it was just, and I believe this is, and I don't have a verse to point this out, but I truly believe if of all times in history, this was the most prominent demonic time in the world. I believe that God released the demons and they were in Jerusalem and they were causing havoc. They were having a field day with that. But lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold, but the one who endures to the end will be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. Let's look at that real quick. Has nothing to do with Hebrews, but it's interesting. What is Jesus saying here? And the gospel of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. What does that mean to a dispensationalist? Anyone want to take a stab at that? Okay, dispensationalists believe that Jesus will not come back until the gospel has been proclaimed throughout the whole world, the entire planet. That's what they say, and that's how they mean it. But interestingly enough, if you look this word up, world, does anybody know what that word means? It actually doesn't mean world. It doesn't mean planet. It is the Greek word oikomene. Oikomene. What that's translated the inhabited earth. What Jesus is saying is this gospel will be proclaimed throughout the whole inhabited land. And then the end will come. Well, dispensationalists are a little disheartened by that because now it could have already happened. There's no need. There's no worldwide revival, as it were. It's just going to happen. And also, and like I said, I'm stepping on Daniel's toes here, but I don't care. And we see that this end times, this end of things that are going to happen, is horrible, but it's not what the dispensationalists will say, because in verse 16 of 24, evidently all you need to do is to get out of let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. So you don't have to go hide very far, just the mountains. Let the one who is on the housetop not go down to take what is in this house. Okay, what does that say? You've got limited time. You need to make a way and get out. And let the one who's in the field not turn back to take his cloak. Again, you got limited time. You need to get out. And the last woman who were pregnant in those days, who are nursing infants in those days. Again, it's going to be hard. There will be hardships. Pray that your flight may not be in winter or on a Sabbath. We still have the law. I mean, this is still technically the Old Testament because it's not 70 AD just yet. For then there will arise such a great tribulation, such as not been from the beginning of the world until now, and never will be. There's what Jesus said about 70 AD. And if those days had not been cut short, no human being would be saved. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be cut short. Then if anyone says to you, look, here's Christ. No, don't believe it. For false Christ and false prophets will arise and perform great signs and wonders as to lead astray, if possible, even the elect. Okay, so now we stop right there and interject something else, because we have a time frame from the crucifixion and the resurrection of Jesus Christ until Rome army marched in Jerusalem of about 40 years. Do you think we have any idea how many false prophets were around in those days? The ones who actually claimed to be Christ? We've got a little bit of a record. It is not complete. But during the time from Jesus' birth up until the first century, I think I counted about 10 to 12. That's a lot. To say that, to say, I'm Jesus. So It's nothing new. And it's again, Jesus said this is going to happen. For false Christs and false prophets will arise and perform great signs and wonders as to lead astray, if possible, even the elect. So now we go back to the book of Hebrews. What's going on? These people are disheartened. I mean, Jesus is supposed to come back soon. Man, it's been 30 years. He still ain't coming back. I don't. And they're saying in their hearts, maybe we had this wrong. Maybe Judaism is still the way. Maybe he hasn't come yet. I mean, because they're looking at it from their perspective. Imagine that, to say, yeah, let me grab a name here. Judas of Galilee was a false prophet. They say, well, Judas of Galilee, he was leading a revolt against Rome, and we were sure that he was the Christ, but Rome killed him. Then we have Simon of Perea. This was about 4 BC. We had another false Christ. Athronoges the shepherd, Thodius, one they just call the Egyptian, Dositheos the Samaritan, and this guy was around, they don't know exactly, but around 30 to 50 A.D. He was a Samaritan leader who claimed to be the expected Messiah, and a prophet like Moses, attracted followers and teachings of immorality and divine power. Succeeded briefly by his disciple, Simon Magus. Killed by rivals, his movements fragmented into a sect. Menahem ben Judah was another one who claimed to be Christ. And this is not an exhaustive list. This is just what I grabbed off the internet. But false Christs are going to come, and they're going to deceive many. Even if it was possible, they're going to deceive the elect. So remember, take all this and let's go to Hebrews here. Why is the book of Hebrews written? Because of all these false Christs. Because of these promises that they saw go unfulfilled. And I will say that, just look at that. Maybe who ever believed in dispensationalism here, besides me and Debbie? Okay, but okay, Bo.
Dispensationalism's like that Christ is coming back and there's going to be an ultimate apocalypse and all that, right?
You know, the whole Left Behind series on TV and movies.
Okay,
We're going to face tribulation, and there's
Sure,
going to be an Antichrist, but all these things have to happen in order for Jesus to come back.
Right.
Jesus ain't coming back until the Antichrist kills about a third of Israel.
No, 100% I believe that.
That's dispensationalism. Now imagine, I fear for the dispensationalists, that at some point they're going to be like these Jewish converts saying, you know what, I've given up all this garbage. I don't even know that there is a Jesus. Look at how many books that, 88 Reasons Why He's Coming in 1988.
Yeah.
It's nothing. And again, the next year. And always somebody's writing a book predicting when Jesus is going to come back. That's what the dispensationalist has to look towards. That it ain't never going to happen. And it's frightening to think that these folks have this type of faith, and that's the shame of it, because this is how it happens and why it happens, because they don't have faith in Christ. They have faith in a promise that the Bible tells them. They're completely different. They just misunderstood it. That's why I'd rather have faith in Christ and just let it work out however He wants to work it out. And Jesus goes on in verse 25, see, I have told you beforehand. He's telling these guys, I'm telling you.
Where are we at?
We're in Matthew 24:25. But he's just reiterating the same thing that he's just said. It's got to be important, because he just keeps hammering this. He hammers out that there's going to be false Christs. He's going to hammer out. Don't you believe this? Don't you believe that? And now in 25, he says, I've told you all of this before. So this is not the first time they've heard this warning. He's telling them again. Now in 26, he says, so if they say to you, look, Jesus is in the wilderness, do not go out. If they say, look, he's in the inner rooms, do not believe it. For as lightning comes from the east and shines as far as the west, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. Whoa, Jesus, what are you just telling us? You're telling us that it's going to happen that quick? Like a bolt of lightning? That there's no tribulation period that we're going to look forward to in the near future that's going to last 7 years and going to kill millions of people? No. He says, this is coming lightning quick. Now, take that and let's go back to the book of Hebrews. What did they expect? They expected to see Jesus return very soon, in the fact that, okay, they killed him. He rose from the dead. He stayed on earth 40 days. He rose. And we all saw it. We all saw him go up into heaven. And now he promised us that his returning was imminent. It's going to be like lightning. It's going to happen that quick. Wherever the corpse is, there the vultures will gather. Man. Immediately, Jesus says, immediately after the tribulation. What tribulation? We believe this to be the 70 AD. This is the tribulation in those days. The sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then will appear in heaven the sign of the Son of Man, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send out his angel with a loud trumpet, and call, and will gather his elect from the four winds, from the ends of the heaven to the other. And he's laying it all out, but they just have a misconception of time. There's a certain expectation as us as humans. Bo calls me, says, hey, would you, I need some help putting something in my truck. I'm going to come to your house and pick you up, and we're going to go do it. All right, man, I'll help you out. Bo, what time you be here? I'll be there soon. That's it. Now, what do we infer from that? We infer, because it's soon, that he won't be here in like 10 minutes. Yeah. And now it's been 30 years. I'm doubting Bo's going to show up. But you see, that's what these Hebrews are concerned with. Jesus is making it very clear that his coming back is imminent. It could be at any time. And it's still not happening. And they're growing concerned because, man, I'm starting to get persecuted. And these people are trying to kill me. Am I dying for nothing? Is Christ really the Christ? I mean, we don't even know what's going through their minds. But the writer of Hebrews, Apollos, sorry, had to throw that in there. But he's telling them that what he's given to them is far superior than what the Old Testament has said. He's drilling it into their heads. And then Jesus seems to go out in left field talking about a fig tree. Jesus, what are you doing? From the fig tree in verse 32, Matthew 24:32. From the fig tree, learn its lesson. As soon as its branch becomes tender and it puts out leaves, you know that summer is near. So also, when you see all these things, you know that he is near at the very gates. Now, what's he talking about? Jesus, what? A fig tree. Now we're talking about seasons. We're talking about, well, it's wintertime, that's springtime. Now we see these leaves from a fig tree. And we know that summer is near. And Jesus says, also, when you see all these things, you know that he is near at the very gates. Anybody have any clue what he's talking about when he uses the term gates? that Jesus himself is near. He's at the very gates. Notice that it is plural, not gate singular, gates plural. Anybody know how many gates were on the temple? The big temple doors that go into the holy place. Now, we're not talking about the desert. We're talking about the big one there in Jerusalem. It was 2 massive doors. Massive doors, thousands of pounds. And oddly, things began to happen to those doors around 70 AD. These priests would go in and they would be open. And evidently it took 4 or 5 guys to open these things. But they'd be open. What is Jesus saying here? There's going to come a time, and here's what to look for, because there's going to be troubles. There's going to be people coming that said that I was Christ, and they're going to lead you astray. And it's like cyclical, just the way a palm or a fig tree gets leaves on it. It's going to take a period of time, and then eventually the summer is going to come, and it's going to blossom. He said, that's when I'm going to be at the very gates. Truly, I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. It's a very famous verse. And again, if I'm a Hebrew Christian in the first century, I'm going to look at this verse and say, no, wait a minute. I was 20 years old when he died. Now, I'm pushing 60. He still ain't. My time is coming to an end on this planet. And he's still not here? You get it. You have to understand this would be very shaky when they had been promised that this is going to happen in their lifetime. Now, again, because we think we're important, we think, well, but he's talking about me. No, he's talking about this generation. Bodie Bachman was 4 years younger than me. That man's dead. Charlie Kirk was young enough to be my son, and he's dead. So it doesn't mean that all of us in the same generation are going to be alive when Jesus returns. It just means that generation. It's going to be about 40 years, folks. That's what Jesus is telling them. But through, I don't know, let's call it bad teaching, bad hermeneutics, they had come to their own conclusions that, well, evidently I'm supposed to be alive when Jesus comes back. But maybe they had a Charlie Kirk. Maybe they had a Bodie Bachman that back then that died. And that puts them a little concerned. But wait a minute. This don't make sense. Jesus said this generation will pass, but we see this generation passing. Heaven and earth will not pass away. Heaven and earth will pass away. My words will not pass away. Again, he just sealed the deal, saying, my words are going to be here. Heaven and earth, don't care. My words will not. I ain't lying to you folks, he's saying. This is going to happen. But, he says, concerning the day and hour, no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but the Father only. Well, that's kind of disheartening, isn't it? You just tell us it's going to happen in this generation. You know, are you telling us, Jesus, it's not going to happen in 1988? Not going to be September 15th, 1988? What? Why? Why don't you know, Jesus? Jesus, if you're God, if you are the God incarnate, how do you not know what's going on? I mean, I'm just posing questions that I think would come up to these Hebrew Christians. That they have doubts, that they're just concerned. And if we're honest, we have the same concerns about how things will happen. Because we're just human. Yeah, Jesus, I'd kind of like to know when it's all going to end. I'd like to know the day that I'm going to die. Not that I'd be any more or less prepared, but it'd be kind of cool. This day, well, you know what? This day I'm going to check out.
Right.
I would be certain to say that if I've got, problems with a brother or sister in Christ, I got to go because I got limited time. But these Hebrew Christians didn't know that, and neither do we. And I rest assured Jesus knows in his deity. He knows when it's going to happen. All he is telling folks is, in my position as the Son of Man, I am fully God, but fully man. I have laid down my deity. It's in heaven. As a man, I don't know. But believe me, as God, he knows exactly. Because he was there with the Father and the Holy Spirit planning this whole thing out. For as were the days of Noah, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. For in those days before the flood, they were eating and drinking and marrying and giving in marriage until the day when Noah went to the ark. And they were unaware until the flood came and swept them all away. So will be the coming of the Son of Man. I remember in my youth trying to figure this thing out and having pastors tell me about it, and it never made any sense because they would just start, well, they were just concerned about getting married. They were just concerned about having babies. And that's not what it is. I think all Jesus is trying to say is life's going to continue to go on. It's just going to happen. We're going to go to work one day. And then Jesus may end it all and say, it's time. We may be in the grave for 1,000 years and this thing's still going. We just don't know. But what he's trying to tell them is be prepared. I'm telling you, this thing's coming like lightning. I'm telling you that it happens the same way with Noah and the flood. They were just living their lives. And you cannot blame those people in a way of Noah's time. Do you realize that in those days when the flood came, there was no such thing as rain? It did not rain. The Bible explicitly tells you in the Garden of Eden how God watered it was a dew, a mist from heaven. And that's what watered the entire earth. And now we've got Noah. This fool's out here building a boat. And there ain't no water around. And he's telling us water's coming from heaven and it's going to drown the whole earth. They had to just berate him and laugh at him and just scorn him and say, you old fool, you're crazy. But he wasn't crazy. Because they were unaware until the flood came and swept them all away. So will be the Son of Man. And Jesus goes in verse 40. 2 men will be in the field. One will be taken. One will be left. 2 women will be grinding at the mill. One will be taken. One left. Therefore stay awake, for you do not know what day your Lord is coming. Interesting enough, the dispensationalist also has an answer for that one. Anybody know what the dispensationalist would say about 40 and 41? The 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken and one left. The 2 women will be grinding at the mill, one will be taken and one left.
That's the rapture, right?
Ah, you bet. Man, they're gone. So what the dispensation gleans from that is not everybody's going to go in the rapture. Some even had it down to say, well, no, it's going to be the elect of the elect. They just arbitrarily put this category in. What I think is really happening is one of them's dead. Because we're talking about the end times as far as the Old Testament goes. This is Jerusalem, folks, 70 A.D., where they're eating folks, and they're splitting your belly open because they think you swallowed a coin. 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken. It doesn't say what taken. He's dead. So this is kind of troublesome for the Hebrews, the Hebrew Christians. They don't know what's going to happen to them. What are you saying? Well, I don't want to die. Not that way. I don't want to be grinding at the mill, Lord, and I'm just dead. And then the other side of that coin is, well, when's this going to happen? Why can't I be lucky like Bodie Bacham and just leave this place? Therefore, stay awake, for you do not know what day your Lord is coming. There's no doubt there. It just says when he's coming. But know this, that if the master of the house had known in what part of the night the thief was coming, he would have stayed awake and would not let his house be broken into. Therefore, you must also be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour that you do not expect. Interesting. What are we expecting? we have a tendency, I think, to do that. Even as Christians, we try to look at, what did it mean when Charlie Kirk died? And then, well, first let's go back up. John MacArthur left us. Great man. Then all of a sudden, Charlie Kirk is murdered right in front of our eyes. Then we see a relatively young, by our standards, Bodhi Bacham, just died. And we're just trying to piece this thing together. What's God trying to say? He's trying to say nothing. He's just saying one's going to be, two is going to be filled, one's taken, one's left. Two women grinding. What's going on? No, nothing. It's just, that's his life. Just as in the days of Noah. Things are going to take place. Things are going to happen. Folks are going to get married. Folks are going to have babies. Folks are going to die. Folks are going to change careers. Everything is going to be as it was. But what is he saying now? If you knew when it was coming, you might be able to do something about it. Well, what's that mean, Jesus? Therefore, you must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you don't expect. Well, Jesus, what are you trying to say here? We have to be ready? What does he mean there? Or just be prepared for the coming of the Son of Man. It's going to happen like a thief in the night. But also it bears something of an excitement to it. Something of the unknown to it. And again, these Hebrew Christians are now in 40 years into this waiting period. And it still hasn't happened. They're getting bummed out. Verse 45, who then is the faithful and wise servant, whom his master has set over his household to give him the food at the proper time? Blessed is the servant whom his master will find in his doing. And he's just talking about faithfulness here. Continue in your faithfulness. Continue in your belief. He's saying, just believe me. I'm coming back at my appointed time. Not yours. It's going to happen. And sadly, I think these Hebrews, a lot of them this book is written about and to, didn't understand that. They had been steeped so long into that history of Judaism. But yet they had to admit in their minds and their hearts that, we heard that he died. We may not have seen it with our own eyes, but we saw his hands. We saw his feet. He had to have died. And yet he started talking to us. And it's not just us. There was 500 of us that saw all this. And we saw him leave the ground and go up into the heavens. And he said he was coming back. Why isn't he back? I'll tell you right now, I don't have enough faith anymore to be a dispensationalist. Man, those people who still believe that have got some faith. They just keep rolling it over. No, it's a done deal. This all transpired. Anybody have any thoughts?
To me, the biggest evidence, because I used to believe the other way too, but to me, the biggest evidence, and you said it, Daniel said it, is the 34 there.
Yeah.
I just don't know how you get past that. Surely I say to you, this generation. And the fact that he is not writing this in a letter to the ether, that there are people standing right there.
Yeah.
So clearly, he's not trying to I don't think that he's trying to confuse them.
No.
Certainly he has said stuff where he was trying to confuse people or confuse some.
Yeah.
But it just seems too clear to ignore.
Yeah, well, but the dispensationalists, though, would argue the point and say, well, yeah, that generation, he's talking about the generation that's there. I mean, like whenever in their mindset, whenever the tribulation comes, let's say it's arbitrarily in 21, 25, that generation will pass.
Right.
They can't explain it, so they just have to take it out of context and move it along, only to justify what they believe that it hadn't happened yet.
Well, they say like I've heard too the generation of man.
Yeah.
Whatever that is.
Yeah.
Right. Like.
And also, they will also say that the generation started in 1948 when Israel became a country.
Yeah.
I mean, they just dance around this thing, and it's sad. It's sad that I used to believe a major portion of it, but it was men like Vody Bachman and David Miller who just through their preaching and through God's grace that I got out of that mess.
Well, it's a pervasive, like even in the secular world, it's pervasive. You know, like even the secular world, like if they're making a movie about the Bible or something like related to the Bible, it's all about that, about a future apocalypse or whatever the thing is.
Yeah, and I think part of it too. Another part of that is some of it may be our fault, even as Christians, how we talk about things like that. I've got a real good friend of mine, and he will talk to me, and he said, "Well, so and so, accepted Jesus Christ," and I looked up and said, "No, they didn't." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Nobody can accept Christ. Christ will hunt you down. He will drag you to the Father." "Oh, that's what I mean." "No, you said something entirely different. I know what you believe. I know you believe in limited atonement. You believe the sovereignty of God, but just tell people straight out.
Yeah.
God gloriously saved you, though.
Right.
You had nothing to do with it."
Right.
And that goes for all of us in here. God glorious. I knew a dispensationalist Wesleyan, they'll call him. Even he would say that. His name was Dr. O.T. Spence, and he wouldn't say that you accepted Christ. He would look at you and he would say, God gloriously saved you. Even he got that right.
Yeah.
Man. But I think we just have to watch what we're saying. And I know that because of God's sovereignty, I know that the elect did not fall. The Hebrews didn't fall. But they had to wonder. Just because God has gloriously saved each one of us doesn't mean that we have doubts from time to time. There's going to be doubts. We're going to struggle. We're going to have a sin, or in the plural, sins that beset us. But look to the prize that awaits us. Well, that's all I've got. Walt, would you dismiss us?
Father, in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, I thank you for drawing us here to study your word and learn it, and please let it go to our hearts and minds and souls, and so that we can fully understand and believe. And thank you for your sovereign love, and be with us all through the week. In Jesus' name, I ask for it.